Welcome to the Dark Zone, an adventure racing podcast.
It was simultaneously the hardest thing and the easiest thing that I've ever done. It's just considering that you get up, you ride your bike, and you eat and you sleep, and you don't worry about anything else.
Well, for me, the action is the juice. I'm in.
I need you, brother. Sensei, please.
Courage, Bob. Courage.
That's it. Courage. Yeah. Yes. Thank you. Hey, thank you, Sensei. Thank you, Sensei. Thank you.
Say the word, Chef.
Let it rip.
Adventure Enablers, the leader in adventure race tracking, timing, and race directing, brings you the 2026 Shenandoah Epic Adventure Race, April 11th to the 12th. Registration is now open for the 15th year of one of the East Coast's longest-running 24-hour adventure races. Trek, bike, paddle, and navigate through Virginia's stunning Shenandoah Valley and the rugged Massanutten Mountain Range. New for 2026, multiple transitions that'll keep you moving and strategizing for the full 24 hours. Whether you're an AR veteran or hungry for your first epic challenge, this is your rite of passage. Push limits, chase sunrises, write your story in the wild. Register now at adventureenablers.com. That's one word, adventureenablers.com. So recently, I was introduced to a new product, which is the Newfoundland Carabiner water bottle. A family friend is part of the team putting it together, and he shared it with me, and I want to share it with you. So Newfoundland it's a carabiner bottle. It has the carabiner built directly into the handle. Also, you can clip it to your pack, your bike, your harness, whatever you want to clip it to, and it will hold whatever's inside cold for 40 hours and hot for 20. So long-lasting insulation. It's a nice thing to have in your pack, in your bin along the way. On top of that, Newfoundland, as part of their social responsibility, gives back 5% of their profits go to protecting lands and lives impacted by climate change. So check it out at newatac.com. That's NUATAAQ.com. If you use the code TheDarkZone, you can get a 10% discount and some free shipping. So take a look at this new bottle. Obviously, anything that we get from that code usage will be poured right back into the Dark Zone in support of the podcast and all the sponsorship activities that we have around the sport. So once again, take a moment, check out newatac.com. Take a look at that water bottle. If you like it, you want to order it, feel free to use that code, the Dark Zone, discount there and some free shipping. And if you like the item and the product, let us know what you think about it. We always like your feedback. Thanks. The Dark Zone is happy to introduce our community to adventure wear. That's one word, adventure wear, W-A-R-E, and they can be found at adventurewear.shop. A company founded by adventure racers for adventure racers. They offer a whole variety of products for the community, and check them out this holiday season. Custom engraved coasters, solid wood magnets, metal hangers that show off every hard-earned finish. You can celebrate your accomplishments and get some great products. So head over to adventurewear.shop and see what they have there. Once again, they are adventure racers offering products for the community. So support them by checking them out. Once again, adventurewear.shop, and the link is in the show notes. From time to time, we come across adventurers who are not adventure racers. And we love to bring you their stories because they're interesting and fascinating, and they have lessons in their own journeys, which can then help us with our adventure racing. So for today's episode, we have Tyler Stancill. All I will say at this point is that he is a long-distance bikepacker, and the rest will be revealed in the episode. Talk to you soon, and enjoy the episode. So, Tyler, you were just talking about how you're trying to figure who you are and what you do in the context of bike packing, bike riding, bike racing. And for the listeners, you're catching Tyler and I in mid-conversation. When you do the podcast, sometimes you do a formal intro, and sometimes you just hit record and you start recording. So, Tyler, tell the world how you and I met.
So I was just riding my enduro at the Macaulay Mountain Trails in Old Forge, like upstate New York and the Adirondacks. I've been kind of vacationing there, just escaping the Washington, D.C. swamp heat in the summer for about 16 years now, pretty much every summer. So that's like a safe spot for me. And just riding those trails, one day I saw a guy setting up flags, and he had like orienteering flags, and I was like, hey, I know what those are. And so I asked him about it, and then I saw everybody getting ready for the adventure race, and then that's when I ran into you guys and just started talking. I can't even remember like where or how we started talking, but it was just like I just, when I see people on bikes and I see people doing high adventure stuff, and I got to talk to them.
Exactly. Right. And bingo. Right. And I look forward to hearing your podcast someday. Right. Because that's exactly how it works, is that so for the listener, for the context, so the longest day is the premier event for the New York Adventure Racing Association. Macaulay Mountain ski area was the start finish, and it was a gear drop off. And I was there volunteering, working a van, collecting gear. And Tyler just kind of happened by on his bike. And to your point, Tyler, we see people on bikes, we start chatting, right? And that's what you and I started doing. And then during our chat, as we were just talking, you talked about a pretty big ride that you finished sometime recently, which said to me, this guy would be a great person for the dark zone. So what was the big ride that you did that you want to talk a bit about?
The big ride is the Eastern Divide Trail from bikepacking.com, kind of curated by Logan Watts. And that route was in development for over a decade, and it officially dropped, I want to say 2023. So when I was looking for a bikepacking route, I'd always kind of tinkered with the idea of doing the Tour Divide from Banff to Antelope Wells. Mm-hmm. But getting out west, I haven't been out west. I've always kind of been an East Coast rat. So when I was looking at routes and everything, I saw this big old line going from Key West, Florida to Cape Spear, Newfoundland. And I was like, what is that? And I looked at it, and there's this route that had been posted on bikepacking.com, and I was like, maybe this is it, because it's East Coast and there's still so much of the East Coast that I haven't seen along with what I have seen. So it really, really kind of spoke to me. When I was doing some research on it, I was like, all right, let me look into the trail and just kind of see what people have like posted about and blogged about and everything. And I found nothing. I just kept looking and looking, and there's nothing. And I finally came across Eddie O'Day's interview for it, and as far as I knew, he was the only person that had done it, and it was October 2022 when he finished. So I kind of found this route, and I was like, this is currently the world's longest off-road bikepacking route, and there's only one other guy that's done it.
So let me put you there real quickly to give our audience a sense of the context of what we're talking about here. So, and you'll probably learn this because you've listened to Dark Zone episodes, that there's interconnecting circles of adventure, right? So there are adventure racers who bike pack, they do FKTs, they do running, they do very often adventure race community. They're adventurers in general. And so it's not surprising that our worlds would intersect in that way. And so for the adventure racers out there who are bike packers and bike packing, and Tyler, I'm going to give a definition of it. I want you to walk me towards away from it, because I've done some myself. Bike packing is like backpacking, but on a bicycle. And for the most part, you carry streamlined gear. So it's not panniers. Usually it's not a lot of heavy stuff. It's a relatively streamlined cycling experience covering large distances. If you were to define bike packing, and I want to get to the distance you covered in a second, but I want to give our reader a context for what bike packing is. Would you define bike packing in the same way, or how do you view it?
Gosh, I mean, that was like really well put. It's hard to define something, I guess, in a short sentence, because I'm a very wordy person, as you'll probably find out. I just ramble. So your definition, I think, was pretty spot on. You kind of touched the point of it's more streamlined, because you're not doing touring on roads, and that's one thing that I kind of I've sort of found a lot of times is when I tell people I did Eastern Divide, they're like, oh yeah, my buddy did that like probably 10 years ago. And I was like, no, I think you're thinking the East Coast Greenway.
And so there's a difference there, right? The Eastern Divide, that was an off-road ride. Let's give data to the listeners that eat the data up. How long was the ride itself, miles-wise?
Bikepacking.com says it's roughly 5,950 miles. I did some rerouting and some extracurricular rides that took me about 6,821 miles.
Okay, so 6,821 miles. And when did you do it? What was your start date and your end date?
I was starting in Key West, Florida on, I believe, May 9th. And then I finished October 24th in Cape Spear, Newfoundland.
So roughly 5 months and change you were on the road.
Yeah. And I was slowing down towards the end. The first half of it was like in the South. I was starting in the heat, and I don't like the heat. So I was like starting in Florida, and where some of the locals were like, man, you kind of are starting a little too late in Florida. Monsoons were hitting every time of day, and which cooled things down. But man, that heat was like sweltering when it wasn't storming. And then when I was in Newfoundland on the Gaff topsails, like the high point of the Newfoundland Trailway, and I was getting like polar winds from Labrador.
Yep.
So there's already like snow and everything up there. So I was seeing both sides of the extremes in doing it in reverse.
Several years ago, my buddies and I did a 9-day, 600-mile traverse of Newfoundland on that same trail, the Trailway, which was the abandoned railway system in Gaff topsail. And that got a little burly. Like we stopped the one evening we were there. We ended up stopping in a motel for the night because we did some camping and we did some motel stays too. And we said after the trip was over that if we had set off into Gaff topsail at night, we would have had a much different experience. It would have been a lot harder because, to your point, high point, cold, exposed, things like that. But we're getting ahead of your story a little bit. So 6,821 miles, 5 months and change, and you're the second person, because it's a newer route, right? It was just been premiered through bikepacker.com. It just came out. So clearly, in the context of big rides, this is huge, right? Well over 6,000, almost 7,000 miles. Going into this attempt, right? So it was an attempt. There was no guarantee of success. That's
for sure.
If we were to roll the clock back, right? If we go before May 9th, like, where are you age-wise? Where are you in terms of training? Like, how does one prepare themselves for a almost 7,000-mile, 5-month bike packing trip?
Dude, I don't know. It's something that I just kind of dreamed big on. I just turned 30 that year. So it's kind of just like, this is what I'm going to do for my 30th birthday. In January, I got COVID really bad for the first time. And that really just knocked me out for a while. And when I'm like off the bike for a long period of time, it's kind of depressing. So I think a lot of people can relate to that.
Sure.
Like,
we love the bike.
It's just like therapy. So my kind of coping mechanism through that was like, well, gosh, if I can't be on a bike, I got to be thinking about bikes. And I've always wanted to do a big tour and get into that. I've been doing mountain biking races and everything in the area, but I'd never properly combined my Boy Scouting, backpacking, and orienteering and all that kind of stuff with biking before. And it just all appealed to me. So again, that's why I say I kind of feel like a nobody that kind of just jumped into this. And so, yeah, basically in that like 3 weeks that I was like sick in bed, I kind of decided this is the only time that I'm going to have downtime to plan something like this.
Right. So that was kind of a COVID coping mechanism. I have to spend my time productively. And like a lot of us, you dreamt about a big adventure.
Yeah. And the other thing was, as soon as I was feeling better, I knew I was going to be back on the bike and I was not going to be spending any time planning this kind of thing. So I just said, hey, let's go, let's plan, let's do research. And that's like all I did. And then after that, once I got kind of committed and started getting plane tickets and setting things up, it was like, we're doing this. I was just kind of pinched myself the rest of the way.
So what did you ride? What was your bike setup like?
I rode a 2021 Kona Sutra LTD. So it's a steel frame, fully rigid. I had 29 by 2.2, like Terravale Sparwood sat on my rear wheel the whole way. And then somewhere around the TNGA section in Georgia and then North Carolina, I switched to Terravale Rutland up front, which is a little bit more knobby just to kind of deal with some of the chunky stuff. But for Florida, for hard pack gravel and all that kind of stuff, I was just rolling smooth on Sparwoods. Drop bars, I had pretty much a full outer shell setup. They had these little mini kind of like Pico panniers for up front. When I say panniers, like these things are tiny, really kind of like fit a hammock in one side, and pretty equivalent to how much maybe like a roll bag with some like many thing cages on the fork would be.
Yeah.
And then just a ton of like Sea to Summit kind of dry bag and roll stuff. I had that kind of like what you're saying, the streamlined, you do the seat pack kind of thing. I know a lot of bike packers are starting to gravitate back towards racks. I know
the aero racks are proving very popular now. The costs are coming down and the weight's coming down, so people are leaning back towards those.
Yeah, but it worked for me. I eventually used some like valet straps to kind of keep because it was a larger like expedition pack, and I had a dropper post on there, 27.2 for a steel frame. And so I kind of just had to make things kind of work as they started getting more and more like rattled and clapped out, especially on, once I got into Georgia and North Carolina, things just got really, really rugged. So I was seeing my gear kind of like accelerating in terms of getting pretty tired and worn out.
Well, that's the constant wear and tear, right? Because it's important to remind the listener, and you had mentioned this a second earlier, that this was an off-road ride, right? This was not the Greenway. This was, and I have some questions about that too, because obviously you had to touch tarmac at some points, but for the most part, like I'm assuming this was like you mentioned the TNGA, which is a Trans-North Georgia, a real deal trail. Like that was like, that's not hard packed gravel the entire time, right? There were some pretty chunky sections you had to get through. But am I representing that right? Or am I misunderstanding what the TNGA course is like?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, Eddie is from that area, and he basically described it as the most difficult and frustrating and brutal way to get across, northern Georgia. And it's got some beautiful parts to it, but some of those sections you're really meeting some inner demons and everything, especially on it. Like I think it was even designed for full suspension mountain bike, but when you're doing that on a rigid steel frame with full gear and everything, you're not moving the same way.
And that's what happens in those. And to your point about the gear that you had, the constant road vibration, the constant up and down, the bumps, your gear begins to get kind of beat up over time, right? It just degrades. It's a constant thump there. Were you satisfied with your setup, or did you change it over time?
Oh, it was more the gear that went inside it. I found ways to kind of like dump certain items, certain things that I just found it was just like dead weight and that I like didn't need anymore, that I ended up like shipping home.
What's an example of that? What's one thing that you decided you could shed?
So Florida, I'd say the biggest example, Florida, I was using it just like Goal Zero, like Nomad, I think it's a Nomad 7, just a little solar panel. And I had that like zip tied to my seat pack, and then I had my external battery like plugged into that, and it was basically trickle charging my battery. What I found out later is that not all battery packs will really allow to be like charged by those like Goal Zeros.
Yeah, because there has to be a current going in. If there's not a consistent, strong enough current going into the battery pack, it doesn't know to charge.
Sure,
I think that's what it is, right? I think that's the mechanics behind that.
Yeah. So, and the other caveat is you have to have absolute full direct, like it has to be even like angled towards the sun to really even do anything. Right. So it was so incredibly passive, but I was like, man, I need to take everything, any ounce of like energy that I can get so I can keep moving and not keep sitting in cafes charging.
That's because that turns into zero time. Right.
Yeah,
once you stop moving, your miles per average, they drop to zero, and all of a sudden the days begin to drag on.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
Did you have a dyno hub on the front?
So I didn't at the start. And that was probably one of those biggest gear changes is that my buddy, gave me a little surprise gift. He said, all right, go to this bike shop. And I think it was Milton, Florida. He's like, we're sending you a little care package. And so I went there, and they had a dynamo hub built up on a wheel for me. So I just swapped that out. And that's when I was like, all right, it's been real Nomad pad, but you're not serving a purpose anymore.
Right. So for the listener, I'll point out that a dynamo hub it sits on the front wheel, and the spinning of the wheel creates electric current, which runs lights and it can charge batteries. And I have one on my bomb track. And I think the dyno hub is, if you're going to do these long distances, knowing that just spinning the wheel gets you light is the best thing in the world, because it takes away the issue of worrying about a battery charge and running out of lights during the night.
Oh, it's absolutely essential.
Yeah. Yeah. And if you do it the right way with the USB in the back, during the course of the day, you could set it in such a way that it trickle charges your battery and your phone.
Yeah.
So it worked. Yeah. So to your point, that was an adjustment that you made. You added that on there. So you shed the solar, you picked up the dyno. What else did you, and we're kind of not even out of Georgia yet, right? And so it's funny how you made some early decisions in your adventure regarding gear. Anything else that you remember shedding early along the way?
Oh, shedding, man. I feel like I kind of like picked up some like really random stuff along the way, that I'd pass a hiker and be like, oh, you want an extra bag? And I was just like, sure. So I just like, there's a certain point, I want to say almost by like Virginia, that I'd really collected a couple extra bags that were on my back.
Right.
And I was finding stuff like I found I think it was in like Dillard, Georgia, or just outside of there. I found a Bluetooth speaker, and I was just like, oh man, trail finds. I'm taking this. I don't even know if it works or not. I don't know if it's any good. And I just picked it up and I didn't even test it while I was just like, I grabbed it and went. And then I carried it along until like the next post office that I stopped, and I think I shipped it home. And then I never actually tested it until like a couple months ago. And now it works great. And it sits in my bike shop right now. And so
hilarious.
I use that.
A gift from the trail gods.
Oh yeah. So, I mean, I picked up like a bunch of random stuff along the way, either like off of the trail as just a trail find, like kind of scavenger, or the things that were given to me. And then I'd later just kind of ship them back home. So I've got a whole like Tupperware, Target size Tupperware, just full of random stuff that I had ended up shipping back home.
And looking back on it, were you satisfied with the way you started? Did your COVID based research and what you had to have? Did you feel like you nailed the stuff in the beginning? Obviously, some things had to go, right? The solar panel had to go. You added in the dyno hub. But from a starting perspective, were you satisfied?
No. Yes and no, because I feel like everything was like so close to. I really spent a lot of time like thinking about the gear, and again, I've done backpacking. I worked at REI at the time. I've been a Boy Scout and everything. So I always had that like be prepared mentality, and if anything, I brought too much. And a lot of people always told me that I packed way too much.
But adventure racing too, by the way, when we pack for our races, they say that we end up packing our fears. Yeah. Right. You too hungry, food, dark, batteries. You found and that's a common thing, right? I've never met anybody who said to me something, I really underpacked for this big adventure. It's always the other. It's always I overpacked.
Yep. So I think that was kind of the big thing that I would change again is, and I'd never been on like the weight weenie side of things, and I don't say that in like derogatory way, but because there's different ways to do it. But I was amazed at how many people were just like, you're overpacked, man. You're taking too much stuff. But I would change some things and definitely try to go a little bit more lightweight and like really think about, all right, did I use that the whole time? No. But overall, I felt pretty good about what I had. And there's a lot of things that I definitely wouldn't take compromises on, like having a really, really like upper end water filter. I have the Catadin Pocket, which is they call it a pocket, but it's, I'd say, probably the size of a large cucumber. But that's just something where it's like, I was not going to take any risk with a $20 Sawyer straw, which some people say works great for them. But yeah, nothing like getting illness and everything on a long trip like that. And because that sometimes can be like the end. And that was kind of the further and further I got along, especially about like halfway, was when I was like, I might actually do this. Like there's probably the first half of the time I was like, there's so much time for something to go wrong and I might pull the plug. And
then after a while, you begin to build faith and trust in your systems, right? Your water filter's working, you're sleeping well, like you're feeling good. And you get into that adventure groove where like the clock kind of falls away. The days of the week kind of fall away.
Yep. And then you really start enjoying it a lot more. And that's one of the reasons that I enjoyed going northbound and the reason I picked going northbound, even though everybody else is going south, is I knew upstate New York. I knew the New England area, and I know that I love that climate and everything. So I wanted to kind of almost have the, so to speak, the easy part at the second half and get the hard part, at the ugly part out of the way first.
I got that. That makes sense. Yeah. And obviously that was the reason why you chose the route that you did. Digging a bit more into gear, what was your sleep system like?
So I did a Eno hammock system. So I had a bug net. I had a tarp that went over me, and I loved it. Definitely something that I've been trying to maybe tweak a little bit more. I didn't do an underquilt. I just used a like really thin, like Thermarest Trail Scout sleeping pad, which eventually had holes in it, but that didn't really matter because it was more of an insulation property to me. And that was comfortable, I want to say 90% of the way. The only time that I was uncomfortable in that was purely out of heat, and just getting bitten up by bugs in the south and just having like heat rashes from the amount of itchiness and everything. But other than that, it's like, it's high suspension. It's being able to be off the ground and not have those, because I'm a side sleeper. And if I'm trying to pack light and I just had that Trail Scout pad on me, I would have been uncomfortable most nights. You know, you kind of get used to it
because it's not an inflatable pad, right? And
it's lightly inflatable, like asterisk there, but it's. Yeah, I mean, and you kind of, the more you do that, once you're like 50 days in, 60 days in, you kind of get used to that discomfort of whatever, that sleeping system is, and you kind of build those muscles to whatever that.
You just get used to it. Your body adjusts to that being a reality, right? And psychologically too, once you realize that this is the way it's going to be, then you're fine. Yeah. Did you have any rules for yourself about sleeping? Did you do any motel stays? Did you do any, were there any set expectations you had? Like, I'm not going to do this thing during the ride because you don't want to compromise the integrity of it.
I suffered, I'd say physically in the first half a little bit more. I camped a ton. I did a lot of like wild camping, stealth camping. I eventually started getting some good like hospitality from there's a store owner in somewhere in Georgia, and he had this little shack basically next to the store, and he's like, "You're welcome to sleep on this porch," because it was like raining, it was pouring, and I was like, I didn't have a hammock set up for that because I was on this porch, but still, like, being on that sleeping pad but dry was like incredible, amazing. So I definitely I did accept a lot of trail magic and like any hospitality that I got. And that's like, man, there's so many people that I would want to thank and can list, but that would be a whole episode in itself.
But isn't that great though? Like, getting into that real quickly, isn't it fantastic when you do that kind of journey? And I think first things first, when you pull up somewhere on a bicycle, two things happen with the people you meet. One, they're curious about what you're doing, because everyone had a bicycle as a kid, right? So they become a kid again. And then the second thing is that people on bicycles are pretty fun and non-threatening. And so they're really open to you. Did you find that was your experience when you ran into people?
You said people on bikes particularly, or just people
in general? Like, so when you're riding your bicycle and you roll up somewhere and you're getting off your bicycle with all your gear, people are really kind of, they're very magnetized to you. They think there's a cool thing, they want to talk about it.
Oh, sure. Yeah. I mean, it was a huge mix. And I think that's the kind of the crazy thing about the Eastern Divide and going up a whole continent, basically, is that you're going through so many different environments and areas and So a lot of the South, I was received very poorly. They're just trucks are super aggressive, flying past you on road sections at 100 miles an hour. And then other people are like, you get into a town, you stop for a coffee, and then before you know it, you got like a line of like 3 or 4 people. I like got to know what you're doing. You smell awful. You look like you've been out in the wilderness for a while. Where are you going? What are you doing? Kind of thing. And then I got into North Carolina, Pisgah area, Brevard. And that's when I was on the trail, and it just not really seen any bikes really, aside from a little section in like Gainesville, Florida. There's a huge community there of bike packers and gravel riders and everything. And then Alabama, like northern Alabama, has a really kind of big mountain biking scene there. So there's a lot of folks that were like very, very interested in helping out there. Good friend of mine, Stephen Peters, he was very, very, very hospitable to me. But yeah, when I got into like Brevard area, there's like cross country mountain bikers that just came out of nowhere behind me. And I like, that was the first time I'd seen people just rolling on the trail next to me was North Carolina. I'm already like 2,000 miles in at that point. Gotcha. So they just whiz past me and don't say a word. And I'm like, wait, I need to talk to you.
People, look at me.
But like, then I get to the bottom of that descent, and then I roll into a campground, and like every single campsite and car has at least 2 bikes on it. They got bikes on the roof. They got bikes on like 1-up racks in the back. They got them hanging out of the pickup truck. And I was like, I just hit a mecca. And that was my first time in that area. I knew that it was a big mountain biking scene, but it didn't click with me until I was there. And then so I roll into it's like a bike shop, and they got food trucks outside, and there's a bar there or a brewery. And that was like a very odd and like very interesting, like mixed experience, because suddenly there's a whole bunch of mountain bikers there and hardtails, titanium bikes and everything, but they're all there doing like day ride kind of stuff, right, checking out those trails and everything. They got their hip packs on and everything. And then they see me all like packed up, and they're like, okay, what are you doing? I got some like kind of odd looks from the guys in the bike shop, when I was like browsing through gear and everything. But I'd say after like 4 or 5 people that were like offering me like food from their local co-op and everything, then one guy was like asking me about like breweries, and he was like, "Oh, have you been to the Oscar Blues? Have you been to the Sierra Nevada?" And I kept telling him, I was like, man, I like beer. I know cyclists like beer, but like I got to make sure I'm getting enough water in a day. Right. I don't want to get dehydrated. So it's just like, it's got to be a special occasion. And he's like, well, you should check out this brewery. Oh, there's this really cool distillery down here. And I just kind of kept telling him that like 3 or 4 times. I was like, man, I'm not drinking. Like I've had like 2 beers in the past like month.
You're like, I really appreciate your hospitality, but those things are working against me right now. I can't be focusing on that.
Yeah. So it's like, and after that transaction, it was like the 4th person that like came up to me asking what I was doing. I went from being like starved for attention in like an hour to being like, I need to be left alone.
Yeah. I got to go a little, your social battery was pretty depleted.
Yeah. And I think this trip kind of actually changed me like almost permanently, or at least until I change again. It is what it is. But I thought I was a very outgoing and extroverted kind of personality, and then this trip kind of highlighted the introvert in me and how much I kind of also it really like just that like social space.
You notice that during the trip? Like you mentioned when you were in the shop and people were coming up to you. Did you feel yourself evolving during the trip, or was when you finished it, you sat back and you realized that you're a different person 3 weeks, a month, 2 years, a year later? Like when did you realize that you had evolved? I think it was at the end when I came back, and I was just like, I'm dying for that again. Just that being able to check out from society in the world for a while and not have like those real world societal problems. And then it's almost like you get into a bad situation with somebody, like a truck driver or something, and that's the first person you've seen in a while.
then you're just like, yeah, screw this. I don't I don't miss that at all. I think if I look back on it, I do notice where it kind of was slowly changing over the course of the trip. I call myself an omnivert now. It's like I'm introverted and extroverted. I'm very, very extroverted in like a one-on-one like we're having right now. Like I could talk like this for hours and days. But then get me into like a city or a group of people and everything, and I'm done in like 5-10 minutes.
Gotcha. You've had your fill. Right.
Yeah. So that was a very interesting aspect of the trip. I had a very interesting thought where I was like, oh, this is a 6,000 mile bikepacking trip. I'm going to be on so many trails. I'm going to run into so many like bike packers and everything. And it's going to be a really cool time. And then I realized the other side of the coin was how lonely I ended up getting because I saw nobody for such long sections. And I was like, you dummy, there's like, you're the second person doing this route.
Right.
So
well, it's funny because you mentioned that because like you mentioned the Tour Divide before, right? And the Tour Divide goes from Banff down to Antelope Wells. And in the context of bike packing, that's a relatively well-traveled route, right? Yeah. A lot of people do it. It's a big one. But to your point, there was nobody out there. Like you were on your own for those huge swaths. What was the biggest, if you remember, you went between seeing people? What was the biggest gap in time?
Okay, I'm looking at the map right now. Gosh, I want to say it was probably Cape Fear, Newfoundland. Or I'm sorry, just the whole of Newfoundland Trailway.
The Trailway, yeah, that's remote.
Yeah.
We didn't see anybody else on bikes when we were out there. We saw a lot of ATVs.
Oh, tons of ATVs, and they were like, "What the hell are you doing?"
Yeah. The story I will tell, and listeners, thank you for giving me this moment to tell this story, but it may not come up again. Tyler, when we were in Gaff Topsail, one of my pals, Jed, and I had stopped by the side of the trail waiting for our fellow riders, and a rider on an ATV stopped by to check on us, and we said we're good, and they moved on, and then we realized that it was Geddy Lee, the lead singer from the band from Rush, had stopped to check on us. So I just wanted to, I passed up the chance to say that story out loud to the world. And we were kicking ourselves not realizing it was Geddy Lee at the time. But at Gaff Topsail, we couldn't even see straight. We were so tired and cold.
Oh, so for sure.
We weren't surprised. Sure. So the most remote section was at the end. When did you have the most contact with people?
Most contact with people. Again, I feel like it was probably the South, like Florida. So going through to probably Orlando, like Ocala area is pretty much the Everglades. And a lot of there's a section through there, I think they call it like the Devil's Stairway or whatever. It's like this kind of square section of roads that you go for about a day that really kind of sucked.
Is that with the mangroves on both sides? Like it's like being in a tunnel?
Yeah, I think they call it the grass wall down there or something. Yeah. But yeah, and then it was pretty cool. And I was going back to like kind of your like seeing celebrities or whatever, but maybe more celebrities in the world of bike packing as somebody that's like, I'm a nobody. Like I haven't raised money for this. I'm doing it out of pocket. I haven't like promoted anything. I just got my Instagram page. So being a nobody in there, and then day 3, I was in the Everglades. I get an Instagram message from Single Track Samurai Carlos Bernard, and he said, "Welcome to Florida," and the like Florida Divide or whatever. And I was like kind of fangirling because he's the one that created the whole section of Florida, and he's a really big bike packing race and like super long route curator for the whole section or for the whole state of Florida. So I was kind of like geeking when he messaged me. And I was like, he knows who I am. This is amazing. It's like only like 3 days in.
Right.
And then I had a horrible night's sleep at one point early on in the Everglades. And I went to a coffee shop and some guy was talking to me. And then there's another guy that was kind of just waiting behind this guy, and he knew my name and everything. I was like, what the hell? And he's like, it's Carlos. I was like, no way.
He tracked you down. He found you.
Yeah. he's like, you ready to ride? You ready to get some coffee and ride? And I was just like, man, I feel like crap. You picked the worst day to come and ride with me, but let's go. So that was really cool. And then he just kind of appeared a few days later again on a super, super rainy day that just this huge storm cell just showed up over me, and they just kind of tended to do that down in Florida. So I was like, man, Carlos, you picked the best days to come out and ride with me, but it was definitely a morale booster.
Well, clearly he was tracking your progress, and he wanted to make it a point to, he knew when you would need him.
Oh, sure.
Right? And he made it a point to do that.
Yep. And then Gainesville, Gainesville, Florida, there's a huge gravel and bike packing scene there. Graham Partain is kind of his right-hand man, and he and his family was like really kind to like put me up for a couple days just to make a quote unquote 0 day. And we ended up doing a gravel like century ride out there. It just so happened to coincide with when I was up there.
Well, my question was, how many 0 days did you have?
I don't remember.
Okay. Well, no, I mean, yeah, I'm curious about that in terms of like and I know the listener would be curious too. Like, what was your longest day on the bike mile wise? Like, what was your shortest? Like, did you do your averages? Like, how much did you crunch the numbers?
So my shortest day was, I believe, 27 miles. I think that was somewhere in the TNGA. And I think that was to Mulberry Gap, which is a mountain bike resort. And my longest day was probably 137.
Wow, that's a big day.
Yeah. And I mean, I know there's some people in the community like Logan, who got the FKT for it last year, was probably doing 100 miles a day every single day. It's just, so there's like some different animals out there, sure. But for me, kind of this being the first thing, my fitness and my training was happening on the route.
Well, that's what happens, right? You get better, you get stronger during the ride, right? Yeah. You don't start at top form. And for the bike packers out there who want to do something like this, I think it's best, and eventually racing is a bit like this also for the longer races, is to go into the event being more rested than trained, because you gain capacity during the ride itself. Yeah,
absolutely. So yeah, that was kind of my range. I was always amazed at, and these are a lot more of the touring cyclists, because I did meet some of those people in certain areas along the way, but also couples, or just pairs of people doing bike packing or touring together. Is they pick like, all right, we're doing exactly 65 miles every single day,
right? Or
we're doing exactly 50 miles every single day. Like even committing to a 40 to 50 miles a day, and like you pick that point. I guess maybe they planned better than I did, honestly, because they're going hotel to hotel kind of thing.
Sure.
So I think that was kind of mind-blowing for me in terms of like numbers, is just seeing how there's not a right or wrong way to do it. It's just like, I kind of, sometimes I would start late and I would finish late. There's many days that I went probably until 3 or 4 a.m.
You were just comfortable. That was the flow, right? It was nighttime. You were in your own head. You felt good. And so therefore you'd go that long. Some people would be done by 9 o'clock, right? Hiker midnight. They'd be done sleeping to get an early ride the next day, but you found your own groove.
I would not call it a groove. It was something that actually I would change or try to change to see if I can do it like earlier start and earlier finish kind of thing. I met a guy up in New Brunswick at a gas station that was doing some touring and everything, and he was like, all right, well, I gotta hit it. I need to make camp by like 6 o'clock. That's my rule, like 6 p.m. I was like, how do you do it? I was like, I've not been able, like, I've been trying to get there. And he's like, I tell you, the secret is you don't break it on one tour. You have to actually start you get into a rhythm or a bad habit on a tour, and it's going to haunt you the rest of the way. So by the time I got to Newfoundland, and it's October and nights are getting colder and darker earlier, I was doing some 7 to 8 hours of riding in the like pitch black.
Okay.
So, and what was it comfortable? No, it was just like, it's just kind of how I ended up. Cause then the next morning I was just like, oh man, I need my coffee. I need to eat properly. I want to sleep in a little bit longer. And then I also kind of, while I was doing that process, is find out like, all right, roughly where's plan A and plan B for me to get to the next day, and where can I stop for food?
How did you do your navigation? Did you use a computer or did you go paper-based maps?
A little bit of both, but I was using a combination of, maybe 5 or 6 different like apps. And I was actually, to get familiar with the route, I wasn't just like dragging and dropping GPX files. I was kind of looking at them and checking them out. And then I was using the apps that I preferred and drawing them out on my own, like during the route. And that was a huge time suck. And I think had I not done that, I probably would have been a lot more efficient and done it a lot faster.
Sure.
And that was kind of just a mentally kind of like stimulating and like taxing kind of thing to do. But because this is my biggest time like doing this kind of thing, and there's only Eddie that had gone southbound, the trail was still more or less in kind of like scout mode.
Right. So it really wasn't on GPX files. It really wasn't set in such a way. Right.
Yeah. There were GPX files and everything, but there's sections that were just like, maybe had not been fully scouted in like recent years. Certain sections were way worse than others. Like Florida Divide was like mint because Carlos does that every single day. He rides out on his bikes and he's like curating all that stuff. That is just what he does. Logan's section in his True Home section and 6, the like Blue Ghost section through North Carolina.
Right. And
that's also kind of where Eddie's based out of in Georgia. That section was mint because he knows those trails and everything.
Really well cared for, no deadfall. Did you have to do a lot of, when you got to the more remote sections, was there any hike a bike? Did you find yourself carrying your bike over down trees?
So much. Oh my gosh. That's when my demons came out. That's the worst. I want to say Alabama was like a food desert. Sometimes it was like 100 miles between just gas stations, and that's it. Yeah, and I'd have to go 20 miles off route to like out and back just to get to a CVS or something. That really sucked. And then it started kind of improving in like northern Alabama around Stephen Peters area and Sylacauga, which wasn't really on the trail. I found that one of my biggest frustrations are that there's a lot of incredible hubs with outdoor stores, with good food, with cafes, just things that I think people need for their soul to really kind of recharge, that were just totally missed on this trail. So that was kind of a mission that I took upon myself. And when I kind of wanted to spend a little bit more time on it, was like, I'm going to find and save and like review all my favorite coffee shops, all my favorite sandwich shops along the way that are missed. Just so if anybody else is asking, I can say, hey, if you go 5 miles off trail, there's all that you ever need for resupplying your camping gear and everything.
And that's just, and to your point, that's just so good for your soul.
Yeah.
Right. You get off the bike, cup of coffee, sugar and caffeine are magical combinations, some social connection, and you're back at it. And to your point, because this was such a lowly traveled route, you were number 2 to do it. That infrastructure is really not built into it yet. Right. And that will happen over time as more and more people do it. That you begin to see it. And you're helping out with that cause, right? You're doing that logging now of where those things are.
And this is where it kind of gets to a little bit of a hot topic for me, and we can diverge away from it if we want to keep it a little bit more positive. But I think that the route needs a lot of work still, and it's like it's close, it's there, and it's a glass half full or glass half empty. I think that it's amazing that there's hundreds of people that put this together over the course of a decade, and then we've got bikepacking.com that just kind of pins it all together and throws it on the internet. And there is, in a sense, each section has its guides and like route recommendations and things that you can do here, things of concern. That's about it. And I think it feels almost like a dead trail because there's, I think, to my knowledge, only 8 people that have done the route through.
Right.
And you go on the comment sections of a couple of the trails section, especially in like Pennsylvania, and the the areas that really have a lot of like trail right-of-ways going through like very, very unmaintained trails, when there's like a gravel route that's totally forest road that's totally doable, like 2 miles over to the left.
Right.
So I think it's,
but isn't that something that'll smooth out over time? Like these routes, like the routes that we always talk about with such reverence, like the TNGA and the Tour Divide. Those routes started off kind of rough in the beginning too, as well, and then more and more users use it, and then it self corrects over time. Do you think that the Eastern ride is just in the early infancy, and then over time that will solve itself?
I don't know. I mean, I'm inclined to say no. I don't want to be negative. It's just incredible. It's incredible. Like, don't get me wrong. Like, I would want to do it again. I might do it slightly different. I'd like now that I've done it, do I do it southbound or do I do it northbound again, and then kind of reroute my own ways and see how I can do it better. Like, I've really thought about that a lot, but there's the year that I was going northbound, there's 6 other people that were going southbound. And then last year it was Logan Casper that did the FKT. Unless people are really not posting a lot about it, or they're just doing sections of it, like
right.
nobody's doing it through anymore. And it just seems like it's kind of dead.
That's interesting. And so the question is, and we don't know the answer to it here, but it's worth kicking around. And when members of the community listen to it, is it dead because of a general lack of interest, or is it dead because the routing is just so challenging that people just really aren't that into it? Right. It's a good question to ask.
Yeah. And I think because there's such a momentum with Tour Divide and everything, and I haven't done it. I need to do it. I need to put it on my list now. But from what I've gathered, there is difficult climbing. There is, really, really difficult climate and weather fluctuations and everything on that. But from what I gather is that it's a lot of like forest roads. And you might have some like peanut butter muds in certain areas after a rainstorm and everything. But it's the Eastern Divide. Like there was like so much hike a bike through stuff that I'm like, this is not a trail. There's no way that this is like, I've got to be off route. And sure enough, like I'm like on course, and it's just sections of trail that are
overgrown,
unmaintained.
Right.
I'm gathering like hundreds of ticks a day and everything, and it's just like, it's brutal. The section that I did I had 2 days in a row north of State College, Pennsylvania, and there was I think it was a TMT section, and it was probably 6 miles of off camber, like loose shale rocks, and just I counted about 120 trees in about 6 miles.
Yeah, and to your point there, and being a little familiar with what Pennsylvania is like, and the guys from the Pennsylvania Dirtbags are just crushing it with their rides. I mean, holy cow, what a great Instagram feed to follow. There's so many trail options in Pennsylvania. There's no need for you to have that many down trees to climb over. Right. Yeah. So to your point. So what is it? So how does it work in terms of the ride itself? And I don't know the answer to this, and you may not know it either, but I'll ask it. Changing the route. What does that look like? Is the route locked and it is what it is, or would they modify it over time when better roads are discovered?
I kind of gathered that the project more or less is what it is. It was just like huge, over 10 years in the making, and then it was published. And I know Eddie was kind of given some leeway into like, because being the first person, like, hey, let us know how this goes. Send us your suggestions, kind of thing. And I was trying to do that, and that's another reason that I was kind of penciling out my the route. Even if it was the same route, I was penciling out in my own apps to get familiar with it and to see like, all right, is this really working? And then I'd figure out some reroutes. I think the largest amount of reroutes that I did was maybe only 4 or 5 like half days, and that's about it. I stayed on route.
You stayed on route the entire time.
Yeah.
So overall, when you look at the breadth of the work, right, and you thought about it, you thought about the route, would you Would you tackle this again, or is there something else that's in your sights, like the Tour Divide? Would you go overseas? Would you do the TCR, the Transcontinental Race, or the Silk Road Mountain Race? Like, what are your personal horizons for your bike packing?
Europe, man, the European Divide, going from Spain all the way up to Norway, I believe.
Yeah, very popular.
And I love it. It's kind of the same thing, just on the other side of the pond. I feel like going southbound on that would be a little bit more desirable because France and Spain is like so cool and everything. And I've never been there, but I would imagine it is a little bit more so than like swamps and gators and that kind of stuff. It's a different type of heat down there.
Yeah.
But I think it would be cool to go northbound on the European Divide Trail too.
Yeah, it's one thing. I'm a big fan of the website .watcher.cc.
Oh yeah, love it.
And they just the European and the Asian the vibe is just so strong. Like the races, the routes and the races and the people and while we're doing great work here in America with this kind of stuff, I mean, Europe is just miles ahead in terms of the culture and access to the shops and the roads and the lack of car travel on some of those roads. And so I agree with you that I could feel Europe calling as well, especially now that we're on the tail end of so many great races. I mean, like I said, there's the Silk Road Mountain Race just finished up, the Transcontinental finished up. There's the Atlas Mountain Race. There's the Hellenic Mountain Race, and episode 130 of the show was Megan Hakkinen, and she just came in 10th in the Silk Road Mountain Race, and she was first overall female. I mean, This is such a great vibe that's going on there. And so clearly Europe is chirping at you. Is that going to be next summer? Or you don't know yet?
Oh gosh. My girlfriend lived over in Sweden for several years. So we're considering just doing kind of a smaller thing over there. It's a little island called Gotland off of Stockholm, and they have like a 93 parish ride there, and it's only like 200 miles. But thinking about that and just some kind of chiller, smaller, more digestible kind of stuff. But I'd be lying if I wasn't looking for like the next like huge thing. Like, has there only been like 2 or 3 people that have done this before, kind of thing?
I mean, you should take a look at the Badlands ride in Spain. It's supposed to be amazing.
Yes.
Yeah. That's very popular.
I'm also kind of a interesting person in the sense that I think I talked about like the water filtration. I don't take any risks there. Mm-hmm. I'm probably the most germophobic bike packer that you'll ever meet.
For someone who doesn't want to be germs, you pick quite the pursuit. Being that we sleep in the dirt and we're covered in sweat all day.
Yeah, but so there's good dirt and there's bad dirt, and like the nature, there's some bad nature dirt. Like obviously you go through some sections, and like when I was going through like Vermont, there's some flooding and some beaver dam stuff in New Brunswick, and then you get whatever bacterial infections that are from there or whatever. But I was like, I see so many people like sitting outside of 7-Eleven, bike packers that are just like, I don't care, I'm putting my pizza on the ground, and I'm you are insane.
Yeah,
you're absolutely insane. I'm like, if I can't wash my hands first or use hand sanitizer, like I'm using some form of barrier, like for my food and everything. I always check the dates on everything. I never go and get like the hot dog rollers from the gas station. Like I'd rather live off of gas station food that's like sealed and has like a Best By date that hasn't expired on it for way longer, just to make sure that I never have that issue. So going to like other parts of the world and everything, I don't want to sound like I'm like paranoid or whatever, or just kind of like I'm a little bit trapped about the idea of doing some of those races in like Africa and like across Asia and everything.
They talked about with the Silk Road Mountain Race, which was in Kyrgyzstan. They talked about how everybody goes there. Everyone's going to get a little bit sick when they first get there, while the body acclimates to the. And if you're a germaphobe, that's going to be a thing, right? And so it's interesting how you. And so to your point, like you're pulled more into Europe, right? More Spain and France, and more of those rides that are a bit more. There's a bit more infrastructure surrounding the choices that you make. Whereas in some like I absolutely love Ted King. He did the race around Rwanda, which just looks amazing. But from an infrastructure perspective, you're really kind of struggling to come across. There's a lot of the water you treat is going to come off farms, like a lot of that, right? So to your point, you're really thoughtful about that type of self-care.
Yeah. And it's like, again, I don't want to sound like closed minded. And there is a part of me that's like feels like I might be missing out, or like if I'm going to have to get over myself if I ever want to do something like that. But then there's another aspect of me that's like at peace with that. There's so much of the United States, and I've never been to Europe. And so there's like, I'm kind of okay with that and willing to suffer in like different ways.
Like anything else, you're going to live inside your comfort zone until you're comfortable, right? And then you might push it further out from there. So
comfort, quote unquote.
Exactly. Well, everything's relative, right? I mean, it's easy to us. I was laughing a few minutes ago. You said, "Yeah, it's not that hard. It's a 200-mile ride."
Yeah,
right. That's the story. As a closing thought for the adventure racer who's considering bikepacking, give me your best pitch for why they should try it.
It's going to change your life immediately. It's going to change your life in the best ways and the worst ways, and use that to decide whether or not you do it. Again, it's a glass half full, glass half empty kind of thing, but I would totally do it again. It's, again, the social aspect, you will change over the course of that kind of thing if you haven't done something like that before. And the adventure races, I feel like, from what I've heard, are closer to 150 hours kind of thing, maybe 5 days, if that's correct. But yeah, like when you start doing multi-months, you're socially going to come back and not be the same person. You're going to have issues figuring out where you are in the world. Like, do I do that again, or is that it? And do I just go back to my 9 to 5 kind of thing? It was simultaneously the hardest thing and the easiest thing that I've ever done. It's just considering that you get up, you ride your bike, and you eat and you sleep, and you don't worry about anything else. So yeah, I think that's it in a nutshell. It's going to change your life in the best and the worst ways. And it's going to also be maybe the hardest and the easiest thing you've ever done.
Well, there you have it, folks. Episode 145 of the Dark Zone Adventure Racing Podcast. Thank you, Tyler, for joining us. Thank you for going deep on your story and your adventure you had and everything you put together out there. Fascinating and great to talk to you and great to meet you. We look forward to hearing more from you. I bet you are sniffing around the adventure racing world and you would find it fascinating. So I'm sure we will see you on the start line sometime soon. Listeners, thanks for being here. Head over to your favorite podcast platform and click, subscribe, leave a review. The algorithm likes that. That helps us out a lot. And remember, folks, as we always say, if you keep racing, we'll keep talking. Be safe.